Now, please try to understand whenever you are going to get the data or whenever you are going to store the data, you actually have different type of options which are there. The first thing you can have, the most popular way to use data in Power BI, what we do, we generally have an import statement. We can use an import statement, and with the help of that import statement, we will be able to import the data from any type of data sources. But remember one thing, whenever you use or whenever you implement an import statement, they always maintain a local copy for your data. They always maintain a local copy of your data resources. Okay, but sometimes if it is a small database, maybe because your Power BI still supports up to 8 GB of this type of data, but if your data is heavy than that, number one. Second thing is that you actually want to get a good outcome from there as well, right? So we can actually prefer to use the second option here. We call them the direct query. It is known as your direct query. Direct query means now you are directly connecting with your data sources. You are directly connecting with your data sources. Okay, and then there is no data set available for us. You are directly connecting your data resources which are there, and then every time when we have a request for reading the data, a communication is going to be maintained, and that communication will is what basically going to help us. So to understand this, let me take you to the first my whiteboard, and then we'll see the difference between import and direct query. All right, so now first thing that you can find out here is that whenever you are going to work with your data resources, we initially have a concept of storage mode. Now, whenever I will use a storage mode, the storage mode, there are two type of storage modes are there. Not two, but three actually. The first storage mode that we generally use there, it's the normal model that you all generally use. Import, import statement. Then just next to import statement, we have the second option, direct query, direct query, and we also have dual mode. Three type of modes are there. Now, when you are going with the import statement, so in the import statement, what generally happen? In the import statement, we maintain the local copy of data. Second important thing is that, like whenever you will go with this local copy of data, it can support up to the local copy of data. It can support up to 8 GB of information. Can support up to 8 GB of information. The importing part, and it copy the data as well. But in case of your direct query, it does not copy the data. It copies the schema. Now, what is a schema? In simple words, they are the column names. They are the column names, right? And these column names initially we store in our Power BI. Every time, whenever I want to read the data, these column names schemas are going to match with your source, and then they will start fetching or start retrieving the data as well. And in the dual mode, sometimes we do have a requirement that I may need one of the resource to be imported despite of Others might be in a direct query mode, but sometimes we require that one of the table must be imported, okay, so that we will be able to perform the task quickly, because they use the concept of whenever you are importing, you are actually storing the information, or you can say the caching the information, and then you are using that cached information for this whole process of execution, and then process that we can really follow. So you have already seen how to implement an import statement in your Azure in your SQL server, right? Now, what if you want to read a data, or if I want to use a direct query approach as well? I can also be able to use a direct query. Direct query is just another option that I will be able to use. Direct query is just another option that I will be able to use for reading the data lively, or you can say for getting a direct connectivity with the data sources, and then you will be start reading the data. So how we can do it? It's easy. Go to get data, get connected with SQL server. I can use dot as a local server, but this time I am not going to use this import. I will use a direct query. But before that, I want to highlight one thing. Actually, when you are going to work with a direct query here, and as soon as the process will complete, the data set, this one, the dataset pane or the dataset window or the dataset view is not going to show you anything, or you can say it is going to be removed from this canvas, right? You will only going to see two things. One is your report, and then modeling. This will not be there. Just to confirm, let's do it. Click OK. Okay. So now this is my AdventureWorks DW, and then fact reseller sales. This is what I'm going to select. Select related tables, and then I will be able to load the data. Now, as soon as the data will be loaded, this one is going to be removed. The data view is going to be removed. Perfect. We have loaded the data. And as soon as the data is loaded, you can see that I have one report view and I have one model view. This model view have the relationship, will show you the relationship between these particular tables that we will be using right here. So they all are connected with the factory seller sales. So now, whenever you are going to import or whenever you are going to use a direct query, actually we do have some different options that has been used for our maybe for any purpose that we will be using right here. And we call them the advanced pane. In the advanced pane, you have three views. We can call them import. Second is your direct query. Third one is your dual. The direct query, sorry, the import is about when you want to store a local copy of your data, you will be able to store a local copy of your data in your machine, right? And then you will start working with that data as well. On the other side, I have this direct query option. This direct query option is generally, again, get connected directly with your data sources, whether it is an SQL or it's an Excel or any of these particular languages that we will be using, right? It actually resides and it actually plays a very important role over there. So the third member is your dual. As I have told you, sometimes I might require that a table must be present for must be present as in caching maybe, right, for the purpose of again reading and writing the resources, reading and writing the data. So you will be able to change these formats according to your requirement. If you will click on direct query, it's already there. You will actually be able to use import, but import is not a good idea because you definitely don't want to cache a file in your memory. You always prefer to go without any cached files as well. But when I will go with the dual, and that to be first of all, I need to select the place where I want to use it. So I'm using under the dim sales territory, and just a minute. Okay, so now let me check with your dim reseller promotion. Where is my dim sales territory? Here it is. So I'm going to select this dim sales territory and I will change it to dual mode. As soon as I will change it to dual mode, you will see that the blue line is going to be divided into the dotted, or you can say shaded dotted lines kind of thing. As you can see right now, they are the dotted lines now. And I also have a local copy of my sales territory data, dim sales territory data. But if you will navigate or switch to any other column, they will show you stable uses a direct query and cannot be shown. But in the case of your dual, we will be able to show the resources, or yeah, we will be able to show the. So now this is basically the difference between dual mode, direct query mode, and import mode. Now, want to tell you one more thing as well. This is actually the most frequently used practice when you have a huge amount of data. Suppose if you have petabyte of data, but as you know that my Power BI can have or can support up to 8 GB of importing data, right? If it will go beyond that, my Power BI might not accept those information. So that's where we generally prefer to use this very nice and clean concept of your dual modes, where you will also be able to import the data in as a local data or as a local data inside your Power BI, and you also have the online copy is also available there. So you can actually see the data, and then you can also have an online copy available as well. So these are some very basic options that we generally have, which we generally need to understand. So three modes are there. Now, definitely when you are start reading the data from your data sources directly, performance plays a very important role, right? Because we need to make sure that the performance of this whole resources must be appropriate. They must be accurate, or you can say they must be appropriate. Until unless they are not appropriate, there is no point of using any of these resources. So you will be able to use this concept of your dual. And now if you just want to switch back to the direct query, just need to click direct query. Okay. And again, it will be shown to you as in single row. Other, so here we can have them sales territory, and then we will definitely be able to start reading the data by just getting a direct query. So the performance is totally dependent on your data source. If your data source machine is going very fast, you will going to get the good response. If it is a bit slow, of course there will be a slight delay when you are they are start providing you the data resources. So this is basically your second important factor. And this is definitely going to help us to optimize the performance. Reason for that, because when we are using a dual mode, or maybe when we are using a direct query mode as well, so our load is based on data source from where we are reading the data. So to optimize the performance, this is one of the very thoroughly used technique that we will be able to use for optimizing the like performance related information, or you can say the performance related data. If you just want to optimize it, you can optimize it. So this was just an option for that we can use a storage mode. Yes, one more thing which is important here is that a storage mode can never be presented to you. A storage mode can never be presented to you without any canvas information. right? It will be available to you by using this canvas only, by implementing this canvas only. And then you will be able to start reading the data directly from your data sources as well. That's basically the very first and the most important pointer that we are actually discussing right. How do the local and structured SQL data create relationship in dual mode? Well, see, even though if you have the local data relationship which is there, right, or which we will be following, the relationship actually they are part of your connectivity process. These guys are using primary key foreign key relationship. So when these guys are using primary key foreign key relationship, right, in the dual mode also, they are just providing you the local copy as well, right? And of course, it is always be connected with your data sources. Every time you will read the data. Now this time, apart from keep getting connected or keep going to request for a connection from your database resource, okay, you will directly be able to work with the imported data as well. So this is how a local and structured SQL data create relation in dual mode by just providing the common column name between them, and then they will be able to do that. That's basically the idea here. So this is the data that you can see right now. If you want, you can just I hope it is answered. GH. It will be great if you will post your name over here because it's very difficult for me to go with abbreviations, or you can say these small synonyms and antonyms. So requesting you to please place your name as well so that it will be more helpful for me to, or I can be able to call you like if it is required. So please, it's a request to share your original, your name with me. That will be easy. Anyways, so now when I'm reading the data, I can have different type of data resources. So I will be able to reuse those data resources as well. And then I can go for any of these three particular modes right now. All right. The next important thing is that optimizing the query performance. Optimizing the query performance. So the thing is that the performance in Power BI generally depends on the performance at the data source level. There are different variety of data sources are there that Power Query offers, and they are very wide data sources which is already being used. There are very wide data resources which are already being used inside this. So the variety of data sources that Power Query offers is very wide, and the performance tuning technique for each source are equally wide. Yes, Telahun,
Sorry, before that, what do we mean by when we say optimizing query performance? Like
I'm
this.
just discussing that part. Yeah, definitely, I'm just discussing that part. Just give me 2 minutes. Let me first discuss about the case, and then we'll discuss. So when I say optimizing the query performance, remember one thing: whenever you are going to read the data or whenever you are going to access the data. So let's go one by one. So first of all, the performance in Power Query, there depends on the performance at the data source level. So when I say optimizing query performance, I am completely focusing on the query related approach, right? That how I can optimize the query, how I can optimize the query, how I will be able to use that query information over there. When I say the word optimizing the query performance, so it simply means that sometimes when we are going to read the data from different type of data sources in Power BI also, okay, in Power BI also, initially the Power Query editor uses a language, and that language is known as your mQuery language. It is an mQuery language which is used by the developers as well, and that mQuery language is a quite typical approach or a quite typical way of representing the data. So when I say the query performance implementation or optimizing the query performance, it simply means that whenever I'm going to read the data or whenever I'm going to generate a report or if I'm going to read the data, if I'm going to write the data, the process should be lightning fast. The process should be good. The process, the time that it is going to take for reading and writing the data should be fast. It should be well optimized as well. So that, like, because the more delay is going to happen in reading the data, the more issues are going to be generated. So we need to make sure that whenever we are reading the data, it should be smooth, right? It should be smooth and we can easily be able to get data from different sources. We can read the data in a good amount of time or in a less amount of time, and then we can optimize this whole information. Optimizing is all about improving the performances. So my Power Query does this, but we use a so now here when we will go with the performance, so performance in Power Query depends on the performance at the data source level, and there are different variety of data sources are there that Power Query offers, and they are very wide. And for performance tuning techniques for each and every one may be different. For instance, if you are extracting data from a Microsoft SQL server, we can follow the performance tuning guidelines for maybe the SQL Server related approach. Good SQL Server performance tuning techniques include index creation, hardware upgrades, execution plan tuning, and data compression as well, right? But of course, please understand these topics are beyond the scope here. These are just covered as an example to build familiarity with your data source. So Power Query takes advantage of good performance at the data source through a technique called query folding. There is a concept known as query folding there, right? Because initially what happened, we can get the performance in Power Query, which depends on the performance at the data source. The more fast your data source will respond, the more quickly you are going to get the data for you, right? We can follow the performance tuning guidelines for the source product because as I have told you that for different type of source products, we have different type of performance guidelines. For on-prem, it's different. For on-cloud, it's different, right? For an individual, it's different. These are the different options you can find out. The another important thing, like as I have told you, whenever you are going to read and write the data in Power BI, it actually uses the concept of it uses the concept of your query folding. But before that, let me take you to the Power Query editor. And inside this Power Query editor, what you can find out here is that on the top, we have multiple options. First of all, so now suppose if I have different tables which is there, right? And for every table, it actually generates. We have an advanced editor here and it generates an M query. This is what we called an M query. If you are not well versed with M query, so it's just a language that we generally that are used by some of the developers. We don't need to use it. It is automatically create all the information for us. So for example, I'm moving to my dim employee. I will go towards this part. Suppose I have some blank files or blank columns. Like for example, name style is there. And okay, I think this is okay. So I don't want this to be there. I can right click on it. I will remove this column. And on the right side, you can see an entry is actually going to be created for the removed columns. Now, if you will go to the advanced editor, this is how it's gonna look like. But the thing is that how my applications are going to understand this. So what they did, they used the concept of your. So now here we will be able to like utilize the removed columns or anything. If you just want, just simply right click on it and you can say remove null column. Remove null column. You just need to click here, go to your advanced editor. It will show you the information. But my compiler don't use this mQuery language to read and write the data. They use a select query, which is known as your query folding select query, right? It does not. That's where we have that. So now query folding, you just need to right click on it. And if you will be able to click on this view native query, this will show you a simple query which is generated in the background in your Power BI so that it will help you to improve the performance. So initially, this concept or this terminology is known as your query folding. So what is a query folding? A query folding with Power BI editor helps you increase the performance of your Power BI reports, and it is the process by which the transformations and edits that you make in Power Query Editor are simultaneously tracked as native queries or simple select SQL statements while we are actively making transformations. So the reason for implementing this process is to ensure that these transformations can take place in the original data source servers and do not overwhelm the Power BI computing resources. So that's the reason we use the query folding technique. So of course you will not be able to manipulate this query. This query is just for the readability purpose. I'm not able to edit it just for the readability purpose. Whatever changes you will be going to do here, those changes are going to be accessed and then those changes are going to be presented. Like for example, look at this. I have this marital status. I can right click on it, replace values, and value to find. I want to convert M with married. Right click, replace values, S with single. And you can see the entries are going on. You can right click on it, rename it. You can also be able to use a advanced editor, query editor. Okay, now look at this replaced values. And as soon as I click on done, you can see replace S with single. Now, when you will right click on this view native query, you will just highlight one line here, replaced S with single as marital status as well. Same thing, you will be able to get it for your married part as well. Okay. This is what we can call the query folding technique, where you are actually fold your information or fold your request for the large data, large information, large resources, right? We generally use it for this one. So this is what we call the query folding, right? Query folding is just about generating a simple select statement so that my compiler will easily be able to understand that what we are looking for. So, Kelimu, the reason for using the query folding is that because see, whenever we are going to make any manipulations or when we make any changes, whether it is replacing the data or you can say replacing the data, adding the data, removing the data, if any of these transactions has been performed or if you perform all these any of these transactions, so at this point of time, all the transactions that you are following, all the modifications you are changing, they initially converted into your SQL code actually. And my SQL code is the more easiest way to just reading and writing the data there. So whenever we are going to work with a query folding is initially help us to simplify the query readability, the information readability, because by using a simple select statement, we will be able to read that information. But as I have told you, you are not able to make any changes to your uh, query folding page. It will automatically generate these changes, these modifications according to the process that we are following here. So that's basically the thorough reason of query folding, right? That's why we use it to simplify the code, to simplify the process, to simplify the program, because it's very difficult for a compiler to get that data directly from your M query and then start reading that resources thoroughly. And you require to be remember this M query syntaxes and commandlets and so on. But here we are already using that, and then we have just a red color, sorry, we just have the change type approach as well, and then query folding can help us to improve the performance. That's the importance of query folding.